Actors have performed, cameras rolled for this man in England, Africa, Italy, in Mexico, in Greece, around half the world. But now he has come home, back to Hollywood, to plot a murder. Highly specialized work, but Robert Aldrich has considerable experience in such matters. He is a member in good standing of the Screen Directors Guild. He has a dozen successful pictures to his credit. His stars are Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. The mood he must create, bizarre, offbeat. The atmosphere, charged with unexpected emotions. The scene, an Italianate villa in a once fashionable section of Los Angeles. A house heavy with memories of fame. The home of the Hudson sisters, both stars of the golden age of Hollywood. Its halls, once crowded with the bright, the beautiful, and the celebrated, now echo only to hectic whispers. The insistent call of a buzzer better left unanswered. A telephone that has become an object of fear. A supper tray that will not be touched. A hammer. A mute scrawl crying for help. From these elements, Director Aldrich will fashion an experience of sophisticated suspense. It is a form constructed piece by piece with infinite care, skill, and the arts of many. It starts with a book, a novel entitled Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? Picture possibilities? Aldrich thinks so. A script is written, the possibilities are confirmed. Work begins breaking down the script. From this come production sketches, then blueprints, then scale models on which action will be plotted. The sets rise, duplicating the location that will be used for exteriors. The picture moves into rehearsal. 2 stars, 2 Academy Award winners. Joan Crawford is Blanche Hudson. Bette Davis is Jane Hudson. Here applying the finishing touches to her unusual makeup for the role. 23rd day of filming on Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, Wednesday, August 22nd. 58,000 feet of film have been exposed. 222 scenes have been performed, filmed, and printed, from an average of 3 times as many angles. Director Aldrich outlines the action of scenes 223, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for cast and crew on location. And we will see just a part of this one-day shooting, a comparatively simple scene between Jane Hudson and an unexpected arrival. First, the high angle. Aldrich and the camera operator on the 20-foot parallel. The camera is hauled up. Each time before the camera rolls, focus, light, action, sound, and 100 other technicalities are corrected. The director and star, Bette Davis, rehearse the scene. Each move, each turn and gesture is probed, altered, re-questioned, finally set. At last, the call for silence and action. The shot is on film, one of the thousands of pieces that will go together to build this motion picture. Aldrich describes the next shot to cameraman Ernest Haller, an Academy Award winner himself. This is the setup and the take. The script supervisors make note of every statistic, time, and record each scene. Now, with the camera on the bumper of the car shooting through the windshield, Aldrich cues the action. The new angle is checked. There are doubts. Checks, changes, decisions, the call for quiet. The sound mixer records scene and take number. The microphone boom swings in. The camera is rolling.
226, take 3.
Quiet. Action.
I thought I told you not to come back until next week.
Oh, I know you did, but I had a free day today, so I thought I'd come by and see if there's anything needed doing.
Well, there isn't anything, so you could have saved yourself the trouble. Oh, don't worry. You'll be paid for today. I'll send you a check.
I'm not worried about any pay. I'd just like to see Miss Blanche before I go.
Well, you can't. She's asleep. Anyway, go. You're fired.
And we move to the next scene. Actor Victor Buono has been rehearsing with Anna Lee and the dialogue coach. His shot is planned. Camera is set up, and soon rolling again. So a motion picture is made. This one with a question for a title. Whatever Happened to Baby Jane? It is made amid curious and noisy crowds and the dazzling light on the California beach, in the dark of a Los Angeles side street. From every conceivable angle, piece by painstaking piece, the art and skill combine to make the story, the characters, the magic that conjures up an image of suspense.
Was there one particular moment in your career where you suddenly said to yourself, golly, I'm a star?
No. There are many times when I say, golly, I was just lousy in that. I wish I could do the whole thing over again. I'll never be a star until I can do better.
How easily or difficult do you find the burden of being a star?
Sometimes it's easy to get there, but it's very difficult to stay there. Yeah. And if you call me durable, like all the English people do, I'll leave the studio.
Do you find it sort of difficult, as it were, maintaining the star exterior when perhaps you're tired or you're a bit depressed or...
No, I think my training in pictures has been so great, and my growing up in front of a camera, well, when you're in your teens and you grow up with an industry and you grow with it, which I hope I've done, I think the discipline takes care of all of that. You see, pictures have given me all the education I ever had since I never went beyond the 5th grade. No formal education whatsoever. And I used to have to read scripts and then look up the words in the dictionary, how to pronounce them and what they meant before I could learn the lines. And that's good, too.
You tended to play career women in a lot of your films, and of course you're a very celebrated businesswoman in real life. And have you never found yourself thinking, watch it, you're getting tough, watch it, you're getting hard?
No. I saved that for the screen, I'm sorry. I harness that intensity, and I hold it until it's ready to go for the camera.
I'm sure you must get very bored by the constant fiction that you and Bette Davis are positively daggers drawn.
She'd kill you if she heard you say Bette. She's a fascinating actress, Bette Davis. I've never had time to be friends with her because we only did the one picture.
One other sequence I must ask you about, which is the dead rat sequence in Baby Jane, which I think, perhaps as much, if not more than Psycho, really frightened me half to death. How scared were you on that moment when you lifted up the tureen cover?
More frightened than you, really, because I refused to work with anything but an empty plate. And when I knew the cameras were ready, then I said, you may bring it on. And something went wrong, technically, with the camera. And I said, don't take the lid off. Leave it. Just take it away. And I still kept the emotion ready for it. And when the technical things were fixed on the camera and the lights, then we went in, and I was still ready, and away we went. Take one. I think if you rehearse too much with the actual rodent, I almost said animal, it looks so big, but it is a rodent, I believe, the rat. Yes. And, of course, the dead bird, too. It's just awful. I worked in the wheelchair on the sets on all weekends because I had an inch on either side, and with your hands there, on the wheelchair, if they were too far out, I had very sore knuckles the 2 or 3 days I rehearsed. As a matter of fact, I took the wheelchair home with me at nights to learn how to get through doors. It's wonderful to be a perfectionist.
I was the luckiest girl in the world, and the only reason I received the part was that none of the name women in Hollywood of that day would play her. She was the first really bitch heroine. And when I came back, Warner is supposed to have said, well, they finally found out her type. I have to tell you how old-fashioned I was. I married before I lost my virginity. Once more, I was 26 years old, and it almost killed me to wait. I haven't any idea how I had the guts to do that whole thing. I have no idea. But when you're young, and wanting to get somewhere, that's a terrific incentive. My first fine, great director was William Wyler. And that was really the beginning. That was really what made me a permanent above the title star.
Mr. Wyler, you directed Bette Davis in 3 pictures. Yes, come right here. Was she difficult? Sit down.
Difficult? No. Easy? No. What I mean is, she was difficult in a sense. I think every good actress is, or should be, difficult by being very demanding of everyone, most of all from herself. She wanted everything to be perfect and to be great, and most of the time it was.
You may be one of 5 people in the United States of America that can light up a cigarette on television with impunity.
If I didn't smoke a cigarette, they would not know who I was. I got a beautiful daughter from one of these awful marriages. So there's good out of everything. I couldn't mind an hour of what that was like for Bede. I really couldn't. And I think my life right now without children would be a sad and sorry affair. I finished 18 years at Warner's, built many sound stages there, never got a letter of goodbye, ended up in the back lot with a sound man, Heinz Splanky, a producer, till dawn, having drinks, and that's how I left the Warner lot.
You've never done a commercial before?
No, I've never done a commercial before. As a matter of fact, there really isn't enough money to get me to do a commercial about a product I didn't believe in. And I think Awake is delicious. I always felt that Jane was the kind that never washed her face. She just added the makeup each day. When she saw to it, I didn't get the Oscar for Baby Jane. She went to all the New York nominees and said, please do not vote for her. She was so jealous. I was furious because that would have made me the first person with 3. That was one Oscar I really felt I would get.
I think Bette and Joan are always talked about in the same breath, even though they only appeared in one picture together, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, is the way that they attacked their roles. They both dove in there with claws and grabbed hold of the material and startled their audiences by the fever of their pitch.
All right, Blanche Hudson, Miss Big Fat Movie Star.
The kinship between Bette Davis and Joan Crawford has to do with the lack of boundaries between who they were and who they played. They wore their lives on their sleeves, so to speak, while they were on screen.
It must have been a lot of fun for the public who knew Davis and Crawford from 30 years of stardom to see them finally paired. And it's kind of like the battle of Godzilla and Rodan. I've heard it said that Bette Davis was the screen's great sadist and Crawford was the screen's great masochist. So it really is a match made in heaven.
And so these 2 women who were similar in that they were super powerful, ultra ambitious, fierce divas are still linked together because of that one film. It's really an amazing example of one film, to quite an extent, defining the image of both women.
Bette Davis used to say that she and Crawford had nothing in common. Of course, they actually had a number of things in common. They both were very strong women who had to fight against great odds for their stardom.
And there's no other way. Not for us.
Bette Davis did play a certain amount of heroines. I don't think she preferred those roles. I think she preferred her more outrageous parts and demanding roles. And she was one of those actresses that really loves looking as awful as she could. There's a certain kind of actress, there are very few of them, but who you can tell just sort of revels in looking hideous. So I think Bette Davis particularly enjoyed playing the latter scenes of Mr. Skeffington, where she suffers from diphtheria and all her hair falls out.
There are a lot worse things in this world than losing one's beauty.
And Bette Davis just broke the mold because she insisted on looking just like the person whose life she was portraying.
Joan was let out of her MGM contract. He was extremely upset about this. Once again, as Jack Warner was wont to do, he saw a saleable commodity on the open market, so he offered Joan Crawford a contract at like 1/3 her Metro salary, which Joan took.
She knew Bette to be the queen of the lot. And she made an effort to let Bette know that she wasn't really trying to usurp her position and try to befriend her, but she did what she often did, which was she overdid it.
She would leave flowers in her dressing room and little gifts, and, Bette Davis was like, what is this crap?
I don't want it.
Now, because Bette was the queen of the lot, she got first pick of all the properties that went through Warner's, and she was offered Mildred Pierce first, and she refused it. And Joan took the role and won an Oscar for it, so I think there's really the beginning of the rift between them. It was even more disturbing to Bette that as Bette's Warner Brothers career was winding down, Joan's was taking off.
Bette Davis very much wanted to be the first performer to win 3 Academy Awards, and it looked like she might have the chance. She wanted it for Dark Victory, didn't get it. Then she made her huge comeback in All About Eve, and she really felt she would win. But she was up against another legendary performance, Gloria Swanson in her comeback, first movie to speak of since the silent era as Norma Desmond in Sunset Boulevard.
Joan Crawford definitely worked more steadily than Bette Davis did in the 50s. They both considered it a black period because they were not protected by a studio anymore.
So by the time Baby Jane came along, even though it was Grand Guignol, sort of a shocker, the kind of thing they wouldn't have considered 10 years before, they were starring roles. It would be distributed by Warner Brothers, and they jumped at the chance.
And Robert Aldrich had originally bought the property of Baby Jane and approached Crawford. And he said, well, if I were to do this, we really need somebody like Bette Davis.
And apparently the deal was struck, but only if Bette Davis got to be the lead character and Joan Crawford played the character in the wheelchair.
He then had to find a studio to do it, and they were turned down everywhere.
Jack Warner didn't like the idea of Baby Jane because bringing these 2 women together to him was a big mistake.
I always wanted everything to be nice, don't you?
Robert Aldrich saw the publicity advantage of bringing together these famed women who, with this big rivalry in one production, would get him all the publicity he needed to launch his picture.
Warner's 7 Arts decided to produce the film if it could be done on a very low budget.
How about $100? A week, of course.
Well, now the 2 were finally unleashed in the same ring.
You wouldn't be able to do these awful things to me if I weren't still in this chair. But you are, Blanche. You are in that chair.
There was no feuding on the set. It was all off the set. They were total professionals.
I always wanted everything to be nice, don't you?
There was a war of dominance between these 2 sort of alpha females. Ultimately, because she was the more versatile actress, Davis got the director on her side. And so I think Crawford began to feel more edged out, and it was a much better part.
They were out to get each other. A lot of times they worked really well together, but every once in a while some unprofessional behavior appeared on the scene out of both of them, which was really out of character. They seemed to bring it out in each other.
The performances for both of them in Baby Jane, I think, were basically reflective of their careers and the kind of actresses they were. Bette, just chewed the scenery and chewed the staircase and chewed every single thing that she could find. She went to extremes with her costumes. Both stars had costume and makeup and hair approval. In fact, Bette Davis was wearing a blonde wig in the movie that had been borrowed from the MGM wardrobe department and had been worn by Joan Crawford in an earlier movie, but Bette never knew that.
When Joan Crawford was shown the designs for the dresses that she was to wear in Baby Jane, she resisted because she wanted to look more glamorous. But Norma Koch, who was the costume designer, convinced Miss Crawford that her character would not wear glamorous costumes. After all, she's been in a wheelchair for many years. And then Crawford agreed that that's the way she should look. Nevertheless, she still wanted to wear falsies, so that at the end of the movie, when she's lying down on the beach, her breasts wouldn't naturally fall to the side the way any woman's would when they're lying down. And Bette Davis had to, at one point, fall on top of Joan Crawford, and these fake breasts were not falling down to the side of her body. They were sticking up as Joan planned. And Bette said they feel like 2 footballs having to fall on top of them.
When I'm very bad and answer back and sass, then I'm Mama's little devil, and Papa says I've got the brass.
This film totally transformed them. Of course, it also set them up on a cycle of horror suspense films that became more and more tawdry. Baby Jane was a huge surprise sleeper hit.
On its initial release, I think people were shocked that these two established stars, there they were together for the first time, abusing the hell out of each other, and moving an audience.
All this time we could have been friends.
Whatever Happened to Baby Jane really is on the short list of all-time great camp cult classics. First of all, it's the showdown of these two rather monstrous, great stars, and both women have, great gay followings. So it's the championship match. The film itself is so outrageous. It's kind of like the tacky daughter of Sunset Boulevard.
Baby Jane is a quality film with quality performances. It's much more than a horror film. It's a tragedy of Greek proportions. Joan plays her role straight, and she plays it for sympathy, and she gets it. Baby Jane, as played by Bette Davis, is played like an ancient drag queen. But also, there's something very, very sad there. She's almost retarded and stifled in her upbringing. She self-medicated herself into severe alcoholism, and she doesn't know reality from reality anymore. She still is, in her mind, a little girl. And she believes this, and you believe it from her.
Bette and Joan in this movie are really brave performers. They are abandoning their glamorous images and coming out as these shock queens. Bette got nominated for the Best Actress Oscar. Joan did not. But Joan managed to wangle herself into having the job of accepting the Oscar for Anne Bancroft in case Anne Bancroft won.
So, at the night of the awards, Bette Davis, again, so confident, she was right in the wings with her purse, ready to stride on stage when they said, and the winner is Bette Davis. Joan Crawford was also in the wings, and the winner is Anne Bancroft for The Miracle Worker. Joan Crawford looked at Bette Davis, smirked, supposedly said, "Excuse me, I have an Oscar to accept." Both of these women beat the odds in that they grew up in a very sexist industry where eventually male stars totally dominated. But these women extended their careers almost to their deaths, and until her death in the case of Bette Davis. They kept reinventing themselves. They did interesting projects. They took risks. They were really pioneers. They were strong women. And once they were of a certain age, they didn't look back.
I think that Bette Davis and Joan Crawford, and the reason we still love them, is because they had goals that they set out for, and they achieved them. And the goals were as simple as entertaining your audience. They entertain their audiences 50, 60 years after they've made pictures, just as much as they entertained them when they made them for contemporary audiences. Quality entertainment endures throughout the years, and both of them created a body of work that's not going to be forgotten.